the summer of 1989. Pink Floyd, arguably the biggest cult band on the planet, decides to do something truly audacious. They float a colossal 30-meter steel stage right into Venice's ancient Grand Canal. Then they unleash 200,000 watts of pure, unadulterated sound across a sea of 200,000 ecstatic fans, all gathered in the historic heart of one of the world's most fragile cities. By sunrise the very next day, something truly extraordinary had happened. The mayor, every single council member, and virtually every political appointee in that iconic lagoon city found themselves drafting their resignation letters. One rock show, one unforgettable night, 0 physical casualties, and an entire government, quite literally, fell. How on earth did that happen? Let's set the scene. Venice, the Serenissima, was, to put it mildly, struggling. It felt like the city was slowly but surely dying in plain sight. The infamous Acqua Alta flooding was becoming more frequent, more devastating. Gigantic cruise ships, like modern-day leviathans, were muscling their way through its delicate waterways, dwarfing its historic architecture. The local population, dwindling to under 80,000, increasingly felt their magnificent marble city was being reduced to little more than an open-air museum, a theme park for tourists rather than a living, breathing community. So, when a charismatic local promoter named Francesco, everyone called him Francais, Tolin floated an ambitious idea, a free, monumental Pink Floyd spectacle to celebrate the impending end of the Cold War. The ruling Christian Democrat majority in City Hall saw dollar signs and headlines. They envisioned a perfect postcard moment, a global television broadcast reaching millions, a million smiling tourist faces, a powerful breath of modern air for a city often accused of being stuck in the past. Even the band's seasoned manager, Steve O'Rourke, was captivated. Pink Floyd had just wrapped up the Italian leg of their Another Lapse tour and was looking for a truly grand, unforgettable finale. Everyone seemed to agree on the core concept. No tickets, no fences, just show up and experience the magic. What could possibly go wrong with such a brilliant democratic idea? Oh, if only they knew. But hold on a minute. Not everyone was swept away by this grand vision. Cue the Venetians, the true Venetians, those who understood the delicate balance of their city. The superintendent of fine arts, a tireless guardian of Venice's unparalleled heritage, immediately reminded officials of a rather inconvenient truth. The entire Venetian lagoon, every single stone, every ripple of its waters, is a meticulously protected UNESCO World Heritage Site. This wasn't just any city, it was a global treasure, and treating it like a concert venue was, to put it mildly, sacrilege. Then came the local Green Party, their warnings echoing like alarm bells through the ancient canals. They painted a stark, almost absurd picture. 200,000 fans, tightly packed into the city's narrow calli and piazzas, would weigh as much as a fully loaded cruise liner. Think about the sheer physical stress on the fragile foundations, the waste, the sheer human impact. And the local newspaper, Il Gazzettino, didn't mince words. Its headline screamed a defiant "Floyd? No thanks," emblazoned above a biting cartoon depicting massive amplifiers, literally squashing St. Mark's iconic bell tower, Campanile di San Marco, into a pancake. It was a clear, unambiguous message from the heart of the city. Yet Mayor Antonio Casarin and the Assessor for Tourism, Nereo Laroni, seemed utterly deaf to these growing concerns. With a dismissive wave, they overruled every single no vote, every caution, every desperate plea. Permits, which typically took months of meticulous review, were rubber-stamped in a mere 2 weeks, a testament to the political will driving this project forward. UNESCO officials, who voiced their profound disquiet, were politely, almost condescendingly, told to enjoy the broadcast from the comfort of their own homes. The message was clear. Venice was open for business, and objections were simply inconvenient background noise. The stage was set, quite literally. On the morning of July 14th, 1989, a flotilla of barges, looking like something out of a futuristic invasion, began towing the colossal 200-ton stage from the shipyards of Marghera. It was an engineering marvel, or perhaps, depending on your perspective, a monstrous intrusion. Two enormous cranes, towering over the city's highest bell towers, painstakingly hoisted speaker stacks that were the size of small houses into position. Riggers, like busy ants on a colossal structure, clipped 1,800 lights to trusses that arched dramatically, resembling the menacing tails of scorpions against the Venetian sky. The rehearsals that followed were an assault on the senses. The thunderous bass lines and searing guitar solos of Pink Floyd echoed off the ancient, hallowed facades of 16th-century palazzos, causing pigeons to erupt into panicked, swirling clouds. For some locals, it was an exhilarating, once-in-a-lifetime experience. They banged pots and pans on their balconies in a mixture of protest and excitement. Others, ever the entrepreneurs, quickly rented out their rooftop terraces for a staggering $500 a head, offering a prime, if precarious, view of the impending spectacle. The city council, meanwhile, seemingly oblivious to the growing unrest, continued to sense nothing but PR gold. They even scheduled a lavish gala dinner right next door to the concert site at the opulent Palazzo Grassi, as if to toast their own genius. The band members themselves, David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright, seemed to take it all in stride, joking with reporters that they were playing a gig on a gin palace in a drainage ditch. They assured everyone, with a touch of detached amusement, that no one, absolutely no one, would get hurt. The stage was set for a night that would prove them spectacularly wrong. Then came the moment of truth. At precisely 10:07 p.m., the sky above the lagoon plunged into an inky blackness, punctuated only by the shimmering reflections of ancient lights on the water. David Gilmour, with his signature, soul-stirring precision, hit the first iconic chord of "Shine on You, Crazy Diamond," and in an instant, 200,000 bodies surged forward, a collective gasp of anticipation turning into a roar of exhilaration. It was a spectacle of epic proportions. Helicopters, filming for the national broadcaster RAI television, swooped low over the crowd, their rotors adding a percussive beat to the music. Waves, stirred by the sheer mass of people and the floating stage, slapped rhythmically against ancient foundations, a primal counterpoint to the sophisticated rock. The music itself was immaculate, flawless, delivered with a power that vibrated through every stone and every soul. It was so incredibly loud that shop alarms on the distant Lido, miles away, began to trigger in sympathetic protest. Fireworks, exploding in a dazzling array of reds, then greens, then the signature Floydian whites, painted the dark waters with fleeting, incandescent beauty. Fans, some bobbing precariously on flotillas of inflatable dinghies, raised plastic cups of cheap Soave wine, their voices hoarse as they chanted the iconic refrain, "Hey teacher, leave those kids alone." For 2 glorious, transcendent hours, Venice, the ancient, fragile city, felt utterly alive, vibrant, like the undisputed center of the universe. It was a night of pure, unadulterated rock and roll magic. But then, as always, came the harsh light of dawn. The magic, it turned out, was a fleeting illusion. San Marco's dedicated custodians, arriving to begin their daily duties, found the iconic piazza utterly carpeted. Not with flowers, but with a horrifying mosaic of bottle shards glinting dangerously in the early light, countless cigarette butts, discarded food wrappers, and, most bizarrely, dozens of abandoned, single shoes, as if a frantic Cinderella convention had been held. Vomit, a viscous, unsightly film, floated in the gutters, collecting against the ancient stones. The Vaporetto dock at Zattere, a vital piece of public infrastructure, was visibly cracked, its integrity compromised. Even worse, one of the massive cranes used to hoist the stage had scraped a meter-long gouge into the priceless marble of the Santa Maria della Salute church, a wound on the very fabric of Venetian history. Conservationists, aghast at the sheer scale of the desecration, made a truly stomach-churning estimation. An astonishing 300,000 liters of human urine had soaked into the city's ancient foundations, a corrosive insult to its delicate ecosystem. The headlines that morning screamed with outrage. "Assalto alla città," assault on the city, declared Il Gazzettino, capturing the collective fury. Television news, with a brutal sense of irony, ran split screens. On the left, the sublime, ethereal music of Pink Floyd from the night before. On the right, the shocking, undeniable reality of the rubbish, the damage, the filth. The contrast was utterly lethal for City Hall, a damning indictment played out for all of Italy, and indeed the world to see. The dream had curdled into a nightmare. The fallout was swift and brutal. By Tuesday, just 2 days after the concert, Mayor Casarin, looking visibly shaken, called an emergency session of the city council. In a desperate attempt to deflect blame, he pointed an accusatory finger at the fans, decrying their barbaric behavior and lamenting the lack of civic responsibility. But the council members, many of whom had privately harbored serious doubts about the concert from the beginning, were having none of it. They returned fire with devastating accuracy, reminding the cameras and the mayor that the permits for this debacle carried his signature, his explicit approval. The turning point came when Gianfranco Bettin, a fiery green councillor, held up a single discarded plastic bottle to the assembly. "Here's your cultural heritage," he shouted, his voice cracking with indignation, the simple object becoming a potent symbol of everything that had gone wrong. RAI, the national broadcaster, aired that clip on a continuous loop, amplifying its impact across the nation. The public outrage, already at a fever pitch, became an unstoppable force. Within a mere 48 hours, opposition parties, sensing blood in the water, tabled a no-confidence motion against the mayor and his administration. Shopkeepers, usually bustling with business, shuttered their windows in a symbolic act of protest. Gondoliers, the very soul of Venice, sounded their oars in a mournful, defiant chorus. The city that had, for so long, proudly ignored the bureaucrats in Rome, now found itself desperately begging them for intervention, for salvation from its own self-inflicted wound. The tide had turned, and it was a tsunami. The end came quickly. On August 3rd, less than 3 weeks after the infamous concert, the city council convened once more. The meeting took place in the very same palace where Mayor Casarin had, with such misguided confidence, toasted the concert's supposed success. The atmosphere was palpably tense, heavy with the weight of public condemnation and the stench of political failure. The vote, when it finally came, was a resounding 36-2. It was a near unanimous decision that delivered a crushing blow. The entire junta, the mayor, the deputy mayor, and all 12 assessors, would resign en masse. This wasn't a resignation born of legal wrongdoing. No laws had technically been broken. Instead, as one alderman articulated with poignant gravity, it was because we lost the trust of the water, the stones, and the people. It was a profound admission of moral and civic failure, a recognition that they had betrayed the very essence of Venice itself. For Italy's ruling Christian Democrats, already reeling from a string of corruption scandals that were beginning to unravel their long-held power, Venice became another devastating stronghold to crumble. Newspapers across Europe, relishing the dramatic irony, ran triumphant headlines that cemented the legend: Pink Floyd topples Venetian government. The story was now global, a cautionary tale for the ages. The reverberations of that fateful night continued to echo through Venice for months, even years afterwards. In the immediate aftermath, the city swiftly imposed strict new regulations. Amplified music above 60 decibels was banned outright in the historic center, a direct response to the sonic assault. UNESCO, whose warnings had been so blithely dismissed, dispatched a high-level delegation to assess the damage and monitor the city's recovery efforts, a stern reminder of Venice's global significance. The concert promoter, Francesco Tolin, was eventually made to pay a symbolic fine of £42,000. While it sounded like a hefty sum, it was, in reality, a pittance compared to the estimated millions the city spent on the gargantuan cleanup operation and the repairs to its damaged infrastructure. Pink Floyd themselves, initially silent in the face of the uproar, finally broke their quiet weeks later. They made a gesture of goodwill, donating £100,000 to various Venetian restoration funds, perhaps a tacit acknowledgement of the unintended consequences of their grand spectacle. David Gilmour, reflecting on the incident years later in Mojo magazine, offered a characteristically understated, almost defiant assessment. "We played, they parted, politicians ducked. It's what rock and roll's for, isn't it?" Venetians to this day remain deeply divided. Some recall a magical, exhilarating night when their ancient city felt gloriously, impossibly young and alive. Others, however, curse the moment that culture, heritage, and civic responsibility bowed to the overwhelming force of a rock concert. The scars, both physical and emotional, lingered.